Easter.
Happy Easter from Pearls of Liberty. We are doing a somewhat abbreviated video this week for the holiday weekend. And we do have a brief segment with Dr. Noah, which you will see. And we just have a couple things that we wanted to touch on. One of them that Don would like to mention, even though we have mentioned the program Lie to Me before, Don has some further insights that he'd like to share about that program.
We're really interested in that show, and I've been digging a little deeper and finding out that, as any other fans of the show I'm sure already know, that it is based on the work of a real psychologist named Dr. Paul Ekman, and he does a lot of similar work to what is described in the show. And he does have a blog and actually comments on the show, so I'm just starting to read that, and he has a book out which we're looking forward to getting, and this whole thing of facial micro expressions is indeed universal, and then there's different societal things that are involuntary as also a part of the analysis. So as people interested in helping uncover deception, we are just excited that this is a new and exciting tool in our repertoire, and we want to let other liberty and truth movement people know about this, and that's why we're talking about it. Also, in context, I did want to mention that it's obviously like any detective show or anything like that, which does tend to glorify the authorities and empower the state. So however, even within that context, I noticed that the character that's played by Tim Roth, that's Dr. Lightman, did have some good one-liners about not trusting government, and I found that pretty refreshing. And there's a little bit of discussion in there between the characters on how you relate to a system that you know does let its people lie. So all in all, it's a very interesting show. We're excited about that discovery and getting the book and learning more about it, and we want to encourage you to do that too.
Sure, it's great. And it's kind of fun. A lot of the bumper shots have like Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and people like that, and circumstances where you can read their faces for yourself.
And it's not just bashing left or right. It's really relatively neutral. They show pretty frequent shots of Bill Clinton and other people that are pretty well known in our culture to have played fast and loose with the truth. So yeah, we think it's a good resource.
It's fun. Very entertaining. And another bit of entertainment news that we will touch on briefly is mentioning once again Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
And Cindy did blog on that. I don't think we discussed it before. We might have mentioned that the film was coming out.
Okay.
But like I said, you blogged about it, and I have some thoughts that I'd like to share. And I haven't read the book or seen the movie, but there's so much of a buzz in the libertarian and truth communities about this film that I thought that I would share what I do know, which is it's pretty important to recognize who Ayn Rand was working for, Ayn Rand, that she was a mistress of Rothschild, which and she was commissioned to write this book, and her philosophy was molded and shaped by the whole robber baron mentality. And what you have, in my opinion, in the book, without again having read it, but having read about it, you have a glorification of the Gilded Age style robber barons, and I'm talking about the period of rapid industrialization after the Civil War, and the people that made their wealth from the expansion of industry. And that is what's glorified in the book and the movie. But what is not talked about, in this case, I think is particularly important to recognize that what's not talked about is at least as important as what's talked about. You have the villains in the story are the people that are trying to stop the progress by over-regulating, and everybody is tired of big government regulation. But what's not recognized is that the people that are bankrolling the expansion of industry are doing so in a closed system. This is crony capitalism at its best. So these are not people that really are making an honest living in any sense of the word. And they're trying to make the labor unions the bad guys because they're trying to pool the workers' collective bargaining power, the labor unions are, in this class struggle that's set up in this movie, that those are the bad guys because they are taking the power, they're trying to play a power game against the people that are the real creative force, so to speak. But I just want to point out that the pureness of this creative source is bogus, to put it bluntly. And we need to recognize that the moneyed power that rose up out of the Civil War was due to the manipulation of the Civil War and the destruction of the grassroots economy in America, and the rising up of the old banking establishment to regain control. That was one of the major purposes of the Civil War, which really isn't discussed. So I want to put all that in context and say, this is not some idealized utopian captains of industry are always wonderful people thing. And I just want to help people see through that.
Right, and if you're flattered by the idea that you are one of these creative force people and you are Atlas, you've kind of been taken in to some extent. We think you're great too, but if you shrug, the world's not going to fall off of your shoulders. And I think there's a little danger in that kind of arrogant mentality that when we read a book we tend to identify with characters, and I seem to be hearing that people are identifying with the characters who are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. If you are a capitalist, you make a lot of money, you have a great job, awesome, congratulations. But in human terms, you are no better than the man down at the corner who's homeless. And as far as what I'm referring to, human terms, in the eyes of God, your value is not greater than the value of someone who perhaps contributes less to society.
So you would not agree that some people matter and some people don't?
That is the line from Dirty Dancing. Where I mentioned that in my blog, that Robbie the waiter, who was kind of the sleazy guy who seduced Baby's sister, was in the restaurant. They were preparing for a meal. Baby was helping him just because she wanted to talk to him and warn him to stay away from her sister. He handed her another Ms. Rand's books called The Fountainhead and said, "Read it, baby. Some people matter and some people don't." And obviously he thought he mattered, and the dancing people did not. So you have to kind of know Dirty Dancing for that to make sense.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of movie fans out there that can probably understand using that analogy.
Yeah, sure.
So we also wanted to talk about sort of why we're doing this. Take this holiday weekend as a time to reflect on our purpose for putting this video blog out there and what we're trying to accomplish and why we want to do this.
Yes, so I will speak for myself and state that I'm not sure that I don't think that some people matter more than other people, but I do believe that some ideas can have more significance, more impact on people's lives than others. And truth and freedom are some ideals that shine. So Paul said that that faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. So I'm not putting truth and freedom at the level of faith, hope, and love, and certainly not at the level of love. But as ideals by which to live, practically, truth and freedom are extremely important and really a requirement in order to live with faith, hope, and love.
And we do see a deficit out there in our culture, in the modern American Western world culture, where we think we are advanced and we think that we know a lot of things and think that we have truth in our lives, but there is a lot of deception that most people don't see, and we want to be light of truth that's shining against the lies and exposing the lies. So we are committed to doing that, to help shine the light of truth so that people can walk in light and not darkness. And from my perspective, it comes from my understanding of the kingdom of God being something that is advancing against the kingdom of this world. Jesus did teach his disciples to pray, "Thy kingdom come." As Christian believers, this is not something that we want to put off into the by and by heaven or second coming or anything, although there will be greater fulfillments. We believe that we are supposed to be occupying until he comes. That means taking new ground. That means when we see the strategies of the enemy, we want to counter the lies with truth. And really lies is the only thing that the enemy has, because he has been completely defeated. So it's all about deception. I had an epiphany at one point and realized that the greatest thing that we as human beings can repent of, or the deepest thing, is not some great sin that we've committed, but from having believed the lie, whatever that lie might be. And there's different lies that we believe in our personal lives that have to do with just various things, and that's the way that the enemy takes us captive. But there are lies that are pervasive in our culture, and that's what we're committed to exposing, so that the kingdom of God can advance in our culture, so that there will be greater and greater freedom and liberty, because Jesus is the one who sets us free. And yes, there are political answers, but ultimately they boil down to the freedom of the soul to find its full expression. And I think pretty much everybody would agree that that doesn't happen in a police state. And we do see a growing police state, and we want to help other people see it so we can put the brakes on it and regain the liberty that is all too fast slipping away.
Ron Paul has said that practicing your faith is very important, but that liberty must also be a priority, because without liberty, you can't practice your faith.
There's nothing more foundational than individual liberty. If you don't have that, you don't have the freedom to practice your faith, as Cindy just said. So if other believers recognize that that freedom of worship is the most important, that's really a great atmosphere for the gospel to go forth, because we can say this is the answer. If Christians think that political answers are the way to go, then all we're doing is introducing another totalitarian regime. And I know that especially people on the left are worried about a tyrannical, Christian, moralistic government, and that has been a feature of certain dystopic films over the last several years. V for Vendetta is one of them, where you see that kind of a thing in England. And we don't want that, and we don't believe that Jesus wants that. We believe that only real love can come out of real freedom. God didn't make us robots. He gave us freedom so that we could choose to love Him and one another. And when you have values being imposed in a hierarchical, tyrannical fashion, then you don't really have freedom to love. God and one another. So that's what we're all about, is helping people advance in love and freedom.
Very good. So we will now introduce our short segment with Dr. Noah. Dr. Noah spoke with us about the impact of pesticide use on children. Not that pesticides are used on children.
Those little pests.
But how children are negatively impacted by the use of pesticides in our agriculture. So here it is.
Yeah, it's a great day. It's Saturday, and we're going to talk a little bit later on about pesticides, but I have the great distinctive honor to have Dr. Cox from Red Bluff. Thanks, Dr. Cox, for coming on today. And we're going to talk about, and he too is excited about, as we've talked a little bit on Don and Cindy's program, is that this particular type of product, Protandim, this Nerve2 activator, is really kind of just exploding in terms of interest in other health professionals, in terms of what it does. And so I wanted to have the opportunity for Dr. Cox. He's been with the product a little bit longer than I have, and maybe share some things that people out there might be interested in.
Well, sure. One of the things that I first noticed in my situation with taking Protandim was that I was sleeping much better.
Nice.
And in addition to that, I was dreaming like I can't remember dreaming in the past. Vivid, colorful dreams. And I typically get 5 or 6 hours sleep a night. I'm one of those guys that I go to bed at 10, get up at 5, and I study and do other things. So I'm normally tired around lunchtime or so. But since I started taking Protandim, I don't need that 20-minute nap at lunchtime anymore.
And I've seen that consistently in the month or so that I've been with my patients, is similar type of thing. They sleep better, aches and pains kind of go. Their energy levels more level. They don't have this up and down, and a lot of that has to do with eating junk where it goes up and then crashing like that. A lot more sustainable. We had another person on that works out quite a bit, good recovery. So yeah, it's kind of an exciting product. Plus, as we've talked a little bit before this, and also on my TV show and on this, is the potential benefit in terms of working with genes and DNA, working with one of the key components of over 200 diseases, oxidative stress. This has an impact on that, so it's pretty exciting to be able to provide that to our patients.
Very excited.
And you had been doing glutathione supplementation before this.
That's right.
Another
company.
I was with another company, and I got interested in glutathione years ago when the research came out that all these children with learning disabilities and the autism spectrum disorder, from ADD, ADHD, all the way through Asperger's and autism, every one of those kids is deficient in glutathione. And so that's what started me looking at glutathione. And at the time, I did not realize that Protandim was available at retail. So at any rate, I chose this company I went with because they had some scientific research to show that this product delivered precursors that would eventually get into the cell and formulate glutathione, but nothing like what Protandim does. It does not activate, no other company's product activates the enzyme systems, at least that I'm aware of. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, glutathione is so big as that's the actual nickname. Glutathione is the, quote, master antioxidant. That's how it's actually described. So of the biggie antioxidants, glutathione is the biggest, number one.
Well, the challenge is that a lot of these companies make glutathione and that actually is a glutathione molecule. And of course that molecule is too big to be absorbed. The gastric mucosa breaks it down, so that doesn't get there. Then there's some other companies that use a liposomal delivery system or transdermal delivery system. You rub it on your feet or hands or wherever to get it into the lymphatics. And there's nothing that I've seen that has any peer-reviewed studies showing how much a percentage that does increase your glutathione levels. So taking the precursors is certainly one way to do it, and there are studies showing that. But once you get an enzyme system revved up, then you're creating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies of glutathione molecules. And no other company's product does that, of which I'm aware.
That's great.
Amazing.
Well, Doc, for being 39 years old and you're sleeping better, I'm really happy to have you here today.
My pleasure to meet you, Dr.
Thanks,
Noah.
Dr. Cox. Well, kind of an interesting this week in terms of what's going on. There was 3 scientific studies that came out just within the last day or two about pesticides and children's IQ. So this is something that's been going on for a long time about herbicides and pesticide. Of course, you have the industry saying, oh, it's completely safe. how do herbicides and pesticides work? Well, they're neurotoxins. Oh, okay, well, maybe the brain has something. Oh, no, it's completely safe. So the first study was from Columbia, the second one was from UC Berkeley, and the other one was from Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. And they all showed conclusively younger children up to 7 years can have significant IQ decreases because of pesticide use. So that's why you really have to be really concerned about what you put in your body.
What type of contact did they have with the
Eating
pesticides?
it, mostly.
So
mostly
just eating food that had been
Now, to be fair,
sprayed.
one of the studies was from an urban, from a rural area. So there's probably some also residue from like that. The other ones were basically just kids eating, commercial type of food, being exposed to the toxins that are on the food, because that's what most commercial food is. And that's what I've been telling my patients, saying, herbicides and pesticides, okay, maybe you have to use it, but understand, it kills things, and it's a neurotoxin. That's how it kills the bug. Now, you're a lot bigger, but we've found out, just like with radiation, little bit can add up and cause problems. So you don't have to have a big dose. You don't have to drink a quart of Roundup and then think you're going to get sick. Just that chronic kind of exposure, and with and other shows on TV and stuff we talked about, these organophosphate herbicides and pesticides have shown links to cancer. But now this study, and once again, I said, it was kind of interesting, 3 studies almost within 2 days of each other coming out with this particular type of factor. So in my practice, what we do is, if you have that kind of exposure, we work with detoxification. And that is mostly with your liver. And so what I do using different type of system, and Don will talk a little bit about another system. I use a system from the University of Washington where you take a certain medical food and some herbs and you watch some foods, and we allow this phase 1, phase 2. Don will describe a little bit what he does for a liver detox, which is another way to try to do it. But what's interesting is that this is what you're exposed to. Here's another article here. Household chemicals linked to reduced infertility. Our whole environment is toxic. Now, I know we're focusing on just pesticides, but all these toxins have a factor. And one of the handouts I give out, which gives you the kind of the significance, is about there's 6 billion pounds of chemical pollutants released into the environment we eat, breathe, and live in every year.
Wow.
6 billion pounds. And as you know, just a little bit of these things hurt people, kill people and stuff.
They accumulate. They bioaccumulate.
They mostly in their fats and fatty type of tissue, and that's why you have to be sometimes careful when you do detoxification. That's why the system I have. People can actually get sick before they get better, because when they lose that fat, these herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, other toxins are released and actually kind of makes you sick. Also, the other factor is that these toxins can be released, hopefully released through the eliminating process, like through your stool and through your urine. But a lot of times they can just be redirected. So they're in your liver one day, and now they're in your brain. The system I use actually is able to what's called conjugate, almost like capture that and make sure it is eliminated through the body. In my practice, I also can use detoxification profiles. Here's some from one of my articles I use. Clinical symptoms of being toxic: headaches, kidney problems, fertility problems, pregnancy outcomes, immune dysfunction, fibromyalgia, ringing in the ears. You like that one, Don? Contact dermatitis, learning disorders, panic attacks, memory loss, Parkinson's disease, mood swings, fatigue, muscle weakness, history of sensitivity to chemicals, cancer, and so that's what we're dealing with.
Pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything in terms of what we're being kind of exposed for. Another type, a couple of articles, the body is a polluted temple, because there's a thinking is that your body should be treated like a temple. Well, unfortunately, we put toxic stuff in there. Not only the way we think, not only in terms of brainwashing and garbage from outside people, which we've talked about before, but also from the chemicals, from the environment. I like that. I like this little article here. Our bodies are landfill, and that's exactly right. Is our bodies are basically like a waste dump, toxic waste dump. Here's a study that was, this has been going on. This is in 2000. Protect your kids against pesticides, because in this particular study here showed that it caused short and long-term nervous system disturbances, like thinking, insomnia, muscle weakness, respiratory irritability, forgetfulness, confusion, depression in this study for kids.
So children are more impacted
Good
by
points.
these things, as you said, because they kill bugs because bugs are small. Children are smaller than adults.
That's right.
Therefore, the impact on children is greater than the
And
impact on an adult.
their tissues are growing too.
That's
So
right. Fast
the more
fades.
the faster your system is replicating, creating
Mhm.
cells, the more any toxin is going to have a negative impact.
Well, not only that, so if you, as Don says, you're causing lots of cells to be reduced, if you start getting these mutations, then you start really creating more problems with these mutations.
Right.
Here's another great, we're poisoning our kids, so Coalition Against Toxins, toxic pollution jumps 5%. So that's what you really have to do, is you have to make a conscious effort. So in a lot of my blogs and what I talk about on my TV show like that, one is you want to try to eliminate that. So I know that organic foods are a little bit more expensive, so there's different type of agents out there where you wash it, you peel things, try to minimize that. Try to buy local, try to help the local farmer. Instead of having some big corporation who makes food doesn't care about you, try to get the little mom and pop. So go to local stores that support local farmers, go to a farmer's market. Those are, think and act more locally versus, being caught up into the fascist corporate system that's out there. Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Thanks so
Very
much.
good.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Be good to your kids. There you go. Thanks.
That's right.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Noah, for your wisdom and encouragement and for being a medical freedom fighter. Don has a few ideas to add to what Dr. Noah spoke about. So,
Yeah, as Dr. Noah mentioned, there's a cleansing procedure that I've been doing that's based on the work of Dr. William Kelly, who wrote a book called One Answer to Cancer. And I think we've mentioned Gerson therapy in the past, and Dr. Kelly's work is very similar to Dr. Gerson. And he was actually a little bit more aggressive in taking on the medical establishment and ended up very disillusioned in terms, he was just getting totally blackballed and railroaded and all kinds of things. They didn't try to kill him like they tried to kill Gerson. But one of the things that I learned from reading Dr. Kelly's book, One Answer to Cancer, a couple decades ago or more, is his cleansing procedure, which does use Dr. Kelly's liver flush, which uses coffee enemas and uses the liver flush procedure of, in one night, drinking half a cup of olive oil mixed with half a cup of lemon juice, and then all these gallstones and liver stones come out the next day, and it's really pretty amazing. And I've been doing that for every 3 weeks for, this has probably been about 6 or 7 times I've done that now. And it is, I'm noticing, very beneficial effects, and it is great to actually see these stones, which are actually cholesterol. That's what gallstones are. So one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I've had elevated cholesterol levels, and I believe that this will cause those levels to go down. So I'll be taking the cholesterol readings after I've done more of these, but I've noticed that every time more stuff seems to be coming out. So it's pulling the cholesterol out of my body, and I feel better, and it's really amazing what it does. Losing weight, and we're watching our diets, eating things that are a little healthier, staying away as much as possible from wheat. And I just really wanted to mention that liver cleanse procedure. It is online at curezone.com. The Dr. Kelly's is one of the versions there, and I do a little bit of modification on that, but it has been very beneficial for me. So I wanted to mention that. Also, when Dr. Noah was talking about the experiences with people having been negatively impacted by pesticides, I have a personal story. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to somebody I knew. Years ago, I have a background in plant science and agronomy and worked at a turf grass growing company, and one of the main ranch hand guy that was responsible for all the pesticide maintenance he kept kind of a cavalier attitude, like, I'm a tough guy, I don't need to wear the mask. And one day he passed out just driving down the road, didn't know how it happened. His nervous system just completely blanked out, and he could have died, obviously, in the car accident, but he didn't, and the doctors are trying to figure out what happened to him. In retrospect, it's obvious that these pesticides do affect the central nervous system, and this is just an exaggerated case of something that happens in low doses to all of us. So we do, as Dr. Noah said, live in a very toxic environment, and we encourage you to find detox procedures that work for you. The liver flush has been very effective for me, and I just know that we all need to be doing that. When I did it years and years ago, I probably should have been more persistent. I did not do it as repetitively as I'm doing now, and that's one of the things that's emphasized on the Cure Zone, is that this should be repeated at least 3 times a year, but the first times you do it, you should do it for about at least 6 times and probably more. So take good care of your bodies. They are the temple of the living God.
That's right. And we'd like to wish all of you a happy Easter and hope that you have an opportunity to enjoy spending some time with your families.
Thank you.